Thanks for tuning into A Better World, where we aim to illustrate that the world is a much better place than it ever was before. I promise. My name is Luis Acevedo. Sorry for that silly introduction. But no, in all seriousness, the show aims to illustrate the fact that today is the greatest time to be alive and show the progress we're making as a civilization. And so for today's episode, we will be going over an article that I read from the Wall Street Journal. And it is titled, New Topic on Campus, Civil Discourse 101. Now, before I get into this, just want to share with you guys that I think this is freaking awesome. And the reason I say that is, in our country today, as I've stated in the introduction video, and I'm sure you guys have your strong opinions about this too, and I'm sure you notice it, it is extremely hard to have any kind of conversation without it delving into politics. Now, maybe, this could be me, maybe it's because I have politics on my mind a lot, and it's one of my interests, one of my passions, I should say. And I've noticed that it is very difficult to have a civil conversation. And we've seen that more and more so recently, especially at college campuses where they're kicking out conservative speakers. Now, I do want to make full disclaimer here that I do not agree with either party wholeheartedly on, in all honesty, I try to be a centrist. I think I am for the most part. And the thing I don't like is that the left, a lot of the times, recently, is blocking the right from speaking. Now, the same was true in the past, that the right appeared to be against free speech when pornography was coming out. They were really against it. Now, that's still up for debate, but regardless, it's free speech, right? Okay, so this article right here definitely hits home for me. Definitely makes me feel very excited about the future and what's happening in colleges, that they're changing and taking away a lot of the things in which people, state college students, are being coddled. And also, my opinion, I think that they have become an echo chamber, because there's usually only one ideology that's being represented, and that is typically, I have nothing against it. It can be equally as bad if the college is strictly all right-leaning, but typically most colleges and universities are left-leaning, so it's an echo chamber for democratic or leftist ideology, I should say. Once again, this happens on the right as well. Anytime that there's just an echo chamber in which everybody's agreeing with everybody and there's no discourse and you don't know how to handle opposing views, it's terrible. That is not the way that we can maintain a functional democracy, because we need to be able to engage with each other, especially with these controversial topics, because we're talking about how we think the world can be best governed. And so if we come together, 2 minds are better than 1, 7 minds are better than 1, you get the picture. So if we can start learning to talk with each other, great things can happen. And even for people like myself, who, quite frankly, I love to debate, and for people like myself who have that same interest but are closed-minded, just imagine how much better you can become if you're open to hearing new ideas. You can strengthen your argument, or you'll realize that your argument isn't that great. So anyway, I think this is a really good thing. Sorry, I know this went on for a little while now, but getting into the article. So what they found, or what they're covering, is that colleges across the country are working on practicing civil discourse. And that goes for the students there, the alumni, and even their parents. So they're trying to make sure everybody who has went to these schools are learning proper techniques to have civil discourse. And so their goal is to combat the polarization that's going on, which I was talking about earlier. That's their main goal, is to end that. So that way we can come together and share ideas and maybe solve problems easier. And so there was this survey that they were talking about in the article, and the survey comes from Gallup. It's 2017, where 67% of students believe that the climate on campuses was against any speech that was offensive or hate speech, which we know, at least most of us know, that when you begin to talk about hate speech and speech that's offensive, is completely subjective. Something that may be hate speech to you may not be hate speech to me. Something that may be offensive to you may not be offensive to me. Therefore, how can you really define it and put it in a box when it's so subjective? So they're saying 67% of students in 2017 believe that college campuses were against any speech that was offensive. So that's really vague, but it's definitely coming from the left-leaning side because they are predominantly in the universities and colleges. This isn't even me making a political stance or trying to tell you not to agree with the leftist side, because there's a lot of things I agree with them on. Definitely a lot of social issues anyway. And basically, anything that you say that goes against what they believe, they consider offensive, as we've seen from people like Ben Shapiro not being allowed to speak on campuses, or there's riots there. Or what about Jordan Peterson? We're talking about two people who are very open-minded to new ideas and deep thinkers, and they're willing to concede their position if somebody brings up something to disprove their beliefs. And so right now it's at 67% is where they believe that you can't have any offensive speech, like I've said 3 times now. Now, a year ago, it was only at 54%. So within a year, it's jumped up 13%. That's crazy, and that's horrible. That's not good. We want to be able to allow free speech on campus. We don't want anything to interfere with our free speech, because when you start interfering with our free speech, you interfere with the way we act, you interfere with the way we think. Now, there's also been, there is a theory that language doesn't affect the way we think. Language is just something, allows us to articulate the way we think, but we would think without language. I don't know what the theory's called, but I heard Steven Pinker talk about this. It was really fascinating. But anyway, it can definitely affect the way you perceive the world. That's my opinion. And so, also, with these studies, these surveys, there was one taken from Pew Research in 2016, and they found that 52% of Republicans believe that Democrats are closed-minded, and 70% of Democrats believe that Republicans are closed-minded. Now, this is bad, because you can say, oh, I know I'm going to have friends on the right saying, oh, well, see, the Democrats are worse because they have 70% of them, almost 3/4 of them think that we're closed-minded. They're the issue. Okay, maybe so, but on the other side of the token, more than half of the Republicans claim that the other party is closed-minded. When these two parties are basically teeter-tottering between tyranny, either way you put it. If you go too far to the right, you get Nazism. If you get too far to the left, you get communism. And so basically what we're trying to do in America is teeter-tot, right in the middle, to make sure that we are even keel and we maintain our democracy. Because if one goes too far one way, then we lose the democracy. That's why we're seeing radical leftists in the universities, is because they become echo chambers for left ideology, and there's nothing to expose them to other ideas. But that's changing. Sorry, I know I'm going on a rant now, but this is an issue that I particularly care about because it's so important. This is the most important thing that we can have, for sure. So, getting back to the article, 26 private colleges are also working towards this, and they went to a Council of Independent college workshops on diversity and civility and liberal arts. And they heard from experts from social movements to linguistics to psychology. And basically what they were doing at this meeting, or this workshop, I should say, was exposing them to new ideas on how to deal with diversity and civility and the liberal arts, and what the liberal arts really stand for, because I think those have also lost their meaning because we've begun demonizing colleges, and in some cases it's understandable, but we also have to realize that education is the reason that we are so advanced. I mean, you know, you can use these dropouts all day long, but your dropouts like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg were dropping out of Harvard, not a community college, not a state college, but the top schools in the world. They were dropping out because they had business plans, and they had businesses that were taking off at exponential speeds. So the dropouts that we talk about and we brag about and say, well, look at them, they did so well, were dropping out of top universities, and they were going to do well regardless. Anyway, going back to the article. Now, Wake Forest University is also another university who is working towards this, and they actually have a unique approach on this, and I like this approach actually. And they're having intimate dinner parties, and the dinner parties consist of about 10 to 16 people, and they're both with students, parents, and alumni, and what they do is have civil discourse. They learn how to have civil discourse at these dinners, which is tremendous. I mean, that's a good way to do it, because then you get to learn people, learn who people are and what their interests are, and you're right there and you have to talk with them one-on-one. You're not in a group of people where you can just get consumed in the mob mentality and get bogged down by that ideology, as opposed to thinking for yourself and appreciating the person sitting across from you that you're sharing a meal with. And you don't want to have an awkward meal, so you're going to be even more understanding to where they're coming from, or at least try to be. So I like the idea behind it for sure. Now, right now, it's in the pilot session, so it's in 45 cities in which they're doing this. However, they're hoping by this year, by the end of this year, their goal is to have over about 1,000 undergraduates do this, and about 2,000 more parents doing this as well. So they are aiming to teach more than just their students on how to have civil discourse. They're trying to teach their parents and their alumni how to do this as well, because parents and alumni are out in the real world where they need to know how to have civil discourse. So that's awesome for the 26 private colleges and Wake Forest University. Now, there's also other ones like American University School of Public Affairs. They're having student-led discussions in classrooms, dormitories, and clubs where they're reflecting on tactics for debate and how to approach situations where they may disagree with somebody or have varying views. And so basically they're trying to teach them how to properly engage, and when an opinion is no longer valid. Or, well, there's no such thing as a non-valid opinion, but there's opinions that just, okay, maybe there is opinions that aren't valid, and those would be, you hear somebody making a stance when it comes to race or when it comes to sex, things like that. You start hearing racist spews or sexist spews, and I actually mean racist spews, like somebody referring to an African American man as the N-word, or men thinking women are less than them and belittling them, like true misogyny and true racism. When you hear that stuff, that's when you know that person is not even worth your time. Or maybe you can change them if you're willing to make that effort into listening and really just swallowing your own pride for a second and being able to entertain what they're saying, to maybe persuade them to think differently, because that's usually what it is. It's just ignorance. They don't know any better. They were usually raised that way, people who think those thoughts. But anyway, American University School of Public Affairs is working on teaching people how to engage and when there is real racism and sexism. So, and also, there's a lot of universities doing this. So also we have Tufts University's Institute for Democracy and Higher Education. Now they actually have a $100,000 grant where they are using it to study political polarization on campuses and how different schools are handling it. So that way, this will give them an idea of how it's occurring, why it's occurring, which then with those two things, if you get those two questions, then you can work towards the answer, you can work towards the solution. So very smart on their part. Now, there's also another organization that I do want to talk about, and that's the FIRE organization. And basically what they do, their mission is to defend the First Amendment. And so, you know, some people may be like, okay, well, who's trying to go against the First Amendment? Fair enough. But it seems that college universities, some are. And so what they're trying to do is they're targeting specifically universities. And so what they do is they have students who are at the university. If there's anything on the books that's compelling speech, compelling you to say something or not to say something, and there'll be repercussions if you say this or say that, then they'll report it to FIRE, and then they'll have a list, have a rating system, the ranking system. And basically, I think if it's FIRE or red, your school's in bad shape. Basically meaning that free speech is totally dwindling down because of ideology. So if you want to see if your school's on that list and where they rank, go check out thefire.org. You'll be able to see that. So basically, they're just trying to bring awareness to it and help fix the situation. Now, another thing that I do want to add, it may seem a little off topic here, but I'm going to try to tie it in. And that is something that I found quite interesting, because in today's world, we hear that the right has moved way right, that they are on the cutting edge of fascism, that Trump is the next Hitler, which I think those are false equivalents for multiple reasons, and I think they convolute the term fascism and Nazism, and they definitely, for sure, take the punch out of Hitler, because when you start comparing him to a man who is not trying to commit genocide or take away rights from anybody, you kind of lose the meaning behind it. Anyway, so in this other article that I read, because I thought it would tie in well with this, Investors Business Daily. Now it's titled, "It's Official, Democrats are the extremists today." Now this may seem shocking, it may upset some of you, but this is from Pew Research, which tends to be a left-leaning site. They found that in 2017, the left, the Democrats, have moved more to the left as opposed to the right. The right has pretty much stayed the same. Now, I do have to add, though, that in 1994 and 2004, there was more of an overlap between both ideologies, so people were willing to concede and say, hey, your idea may be better than my idea, but let's talk it out. So in 1994 and 2004, when they conducted surveys seeing how the ideologies are meshing and how they're, you know, if there's any overlap, they found significant overlap. Actually, most of the people who were Democrats or Republicans tended to be more towards the middle with just a slight lean one way or the other. However, in 2017, both parties have lost part of their centrist aspect. There's very little overlap in ideology. So even though the study itself stated that Democrats or the left are going more extreme than the right, and the right isn't going too extreme, both parties, though, are further apart in today's world. But with this, the civil discourse that universities are trying out, and I believe this will help mend that divide, help solder that rift, so to speak. And so I'm looking very forward to this, and this is something that I care very deeply about, because being able to share ideas, whether they're good or bad, is a good thing. You know, if somebody is a racist, but they're not allowed to say those racist things, how will you know they're racist? I mean, truly a racist, somebody who hates African Americans, hates Hispanics, hates Asians, Asian Americans, Canadians, Mexicans, whatever. How will you be able to know who they are if you don't let them speak? Then you'll be able to point out people, and you'll be able to know what their thought process is on the way they speak. So allowing free speech, regardless if it offends you, is imperative to having a functional democracy. And actually something that I'm sure a lot of you have seen is the Jordan Peterson interview with, I believe, Channel 4 News in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody knows, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. But he was getting essentially attacked by the news anchor. They were talking about, I believe, the gender pay gap or transgenderism, one of the two. And basically what he said was, you know, in order to get to the truth, you run the risk of being offensive. And that's so true. That is so true. I mean, because your opinion may not mesh well with the truth. And so if you hold this opinion, you hold this belief, it could just be because of ignorance that you hold this opinion and belief, and you just don't know any better. And so when somebody tells you something different and it totally shatters what you were thinking before, that can hurt. That stings. Like when you do some deep self-reflection and you realize something nasty about yourself and you're like, damn, nope, that's definitely all me. That stings, like right here. You feel that like burning, stinging sensation. It doesn't feel good, but instead of running away from it, you go head on and you realize there's an issue there and that needs to be addressed, or that, hey, what I thought was wrong and I have to accept that. So I'm really happy that this is going on in colleges across the country. This is a beautiful thing. This will definitely help mend the divide that's going on in our country. So it's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And I think a lot of good things are going to happen out of this. So that's the episode for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something out of it. Hope this excites you as much as it excites me. So, and like always, feel free to leave feedback in the comment section. If there's a topic in particular that you would like me to talk about, let me know. I would more than love to do that. Well, obviously, if it is something which we can prove that has improved over time. So, yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.